We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Hello, this is Tika Lark Fleming, and I'm here bringing you the Black Girl Show for January 17th. 2015. All right, so I'm going to start off with breaking the table. I was going to do little happy stories and stuff, but things keep happening, so I can't just let it go. All right, dancing for cash and prizes. Many so-called leaders from the black community have issues with rap music and reality shows. They say those two things make the black community look poorly. Rap music is part of youth culture. If you don't get it or don't like it, don't listen to it. And reality TV is part of the corporate entertainment, and it's all bad. There isn't a TV show on that doesn't degrade women, or if it is a positive portrayal of black people, doesn't reek of exceptionalism. You want to stop sexism? Work on passing the ERA. You want to stop profit-driven portrayals of women and black people? Work on getting public radio and public TV properly funded again. But that would entail telling rich people to pay their fair share of taxes and letting the public decide where the money goes, and stop letting rich men have pet projects like charter schools. We need to stop the industrial complex. The nonprofit industrial complex not only makes the black community look badly, but it actively destroys economic development and black people's ability to have agency. It discourages black people from having pride. If I hear another person at a white event tell of their harsh upbringing and thanking white people for the gold star they just received, I'm going to kill myself. Even if that were true, which it often is not, have some damn dignity and respect for where you grew up and your parents. I don't care what white people think, but it saddens me that little black children are learning to dance for white people with white people, and these people have earned PhDs and MFAs. Why would anyone want to go to college if the prize is being a rich white person's pet? The nonprofit industrial complex discourages black communities from being commercial hubs. It discourages black art that isn't connected to oppressed children's programming. The propaganda and actions of nonprofits paid for by corporate America through grants that are tax write-off legitimizes black stereotypes. First, if you're black, in order to get funding, you must say the community you live in is a slum. And you must say all black people are in need because of their actions. You can't talk about the system of racism or capitalism because the people who fund you would get upset and not give you money. I remember in my own neighborhood, for our neighborhood park, the city wanted a grant. The grant would involve getting involved with some nonprofit. The problem was, in my neighborhood, the average income is too high. It's black people who've actually been able to buy a house and have some kind of agency. The nonprofit industrial complex views that as a negative. So they proposed a plan where only low-income people could use the entire park for free, and they would have to show their tax returns, and the rest of us would no longer get free reign of the park that we paid for with our tax dollars. Why would anyone think that adding challenges to a black neighborhood that, despite racism in the U.S., has been able to succeed? Why would a community where people have jobs and a decent standard of life be viewed as harm to progress? Well, the nonprofit industrial complex, funded by liberal and conservative racists and classes who want you to remain on your knees for buttered crumbs. I have often sat in with groups of educated black people who have sat around and tried to devise ways that they could make their black community and black people in general look as pathetic as possible so they could get funding for their projects. Maybe we can say it's for poor children. Maybe we can do things for gangs. Maybe we can have a food giveaway. Maybe we could do something with diabetes. And now we have white people coming to our community thinking of ways they can portray black and Latino people as poorly as possible so they can fund their nonprofits and fund their art shows. Why don't they go to poor white communities in the center of California? Well, because that's not fundable. Poor must be synonymous with black or Latino in order to get money from the corporate machine. Then there are whole campaigns with billboards and advertising these kinds of programs. The aughts and 20-something teens will be archived in black history where there were some exceptional black people, but in general, black people were in need and help for their diabetes. And also, they needed backpacks. That's the black community according to the media and nonprofits. It is part of supporting a paradigm of racism, classism, differences, and distractions. I applied for a consulting gig at an area nonprofit and tested my theory. They wanted to know about the UC system and how did I feel about the low enrollment of black people. At UC Berkeley, I explained it wasn't that we weren't getting accepted because we were unprepared, but that the black children who could get into UC Berkeley were now choosing historical black colleges, Ivy Leagues, and other prestigious privates that subscribed more to the idea of diversity and were less anti-black. The nonprofit didn't like that. They kept arguing with me. They kept wanting me to say the reason why all black students were not going to UCs were because they were all unprepared, and even though I quoted the article that supported what I was saying, they got very upset. Then when they asked me about food deserts in the black community, I explained I didn't like the term food desert because it was inappropriate and denigrated the community. And instead of denigrating the community and talking about individual choice, we should focus instead on racism and corporate America and how they pick their stores and how tax breaks and HUDs for corporate America encourage racism and non-concern for how grocery stores are run in black and Latino communities. Of course, I did not get this consulting gig. We do not need more grants. We don't need more corporate funding. We need for rich men to pay their fair share. Get off your knees and stop dancing. Throw their money back at them and say, you want your rights. Well, that was Breaking the Table. Thank you so much. We're going to have, up next, we're going to have Turner Lange after this little short break. But you know what? Before that, we'll talk about the fact that we have a few little events going on at Cali Arts in Inglewood. We have a literary art festival going on, and also the Black Girl Book Fair will be going on March 7th. So I hope you guys can team up with us and show up for that. So right now, we're going to have a little bit of a break.
For TV, sent me to the slammer. Did time without gamma. Time stood still without my pain-kill pill. Still need a lawyer. I got Diane Sawyer. She'll interview me and prove that I should have stayed at margins where the people are friendly, where the music.
Okay, we are back with Turner Lange. Hello. I'm gonna read a little bit of a bio for you. Turner Lange is an illustrator, animator based out of the Los Angeles area. He has been working in advertising and film industry for the past 6 years. Nintendo, Sony, but he's here to talk about Wally Fresh, the Adventures of Wally Fresh. Here you go.
That's the one.
But before we get there, I want to ask, what's your favorite breakfast spot in Los Angeles?
My favorite breakfast spot, I would probably say, is Nat's Early Bite.
Nat's Early Bite.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Okay, all right, cool, cool. I like hearing these different places so I can know where I can go eat.
Okay, cool.
Because I don't know how to cook anymore.
Okay.
All right,
yeah,
all
neither
right.
do I.
So, why did Turner Lange decide to become an animator, illustrator? Like, why did you go into this field?
I mean, the easiest answer is probably just I enjoy using my imagination. Mm-hmm. You know, it's. I mean, that's the cool thing about illustration and animation and all that is it's you're only limited by what you got going on upstairs. So. The idea of being able to kind of like it's an escape. It's like I can literally go wherever I want to. Mm-hmm. When I'm drawing, if I want to go to a sunny beach or the Antarctic or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
All I got to do is just think about it, and then I'll put it down on paper, and then I'm there.
Wow. I wish I had those kind of skills. I always kind of go, yeah, I could draw this, I could be, no, and it doesn't happen. So that's something only artists have. Mm. So you have been in some fine art shows. I actually met you at the Rise, Love, Revolution, the Black Panther Party at Art Share.
Yes.
You did a piece with on Richard Aoki.
Yes.
And so tell me how does a commercial, I guess you would be called a commercial artist. How do you kind of get involved with a fine art show?
Well, okay, so I'll go into like how I got to Rise. I was in an art show at the Coagula Gallery. Can I give a shout out to Matt Gleason and Brian Changoya?
Okay.
I'm butchering his last name, but I really want to thank those guys because they were absolutely instrumental in helping me, as well as Mr. Lester Grant, who is another great proponent of the arts and who loves art and loves artists and loves working with artists. And what happened was I had done a art show at Coagula, and it was called the No Joke Show, and it was highlighting edgy cartoonists in Los Angeles. And I was lucky enough to be included in the group show, and then from there, that was where I met Mr. Lester Grant. And Lester had seen some of the pieces that I had done in the show, and he really liked them, and so he had done. He was curating a couple other shows, and so there was an opera that was coming to town called, I think it was called The Face, and it was about it was this kind of like Faustian themed opera about a guy who was he was kind of like going through a bunch of traumatic stuff, and he was like writing a play about he was writing a movie about his life, and his muse had passed away, and so he was going through all this kind of stuff over the death of his muse. And so the people in charge of the opera, they wanted to have an art exhibit in tandem with the show, so that people, when they saw the opera, they could come outside and then see a bunch of art that was kind of based on the theme of the opera. And so I was contacted by Lester Grant, and he had seen a couple. I do these pieces on butcher paper that's like brown, and I do this kind of like, it's either black or brown ink, and then I'll do like some white highlights and stuff like that. And so he saw a couple of those pieces and he really liked them, and so he was like, would you be interested in doing some work for this opera house? And so I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. You know, and I mean, for me, I'll work on anything. You know, it's like, because part of it is just the fun of, you know, going into a new project and like what the challenge of the new piece is going to be, and then also it's just that you just don't know where the opportunities are going to come up, and especially being like a freelancer or an artist in today's, you know, market is just terrible. You know, it's the arts have taken a pretty big hit, you know, from the recession until now. So so I did the show with the Face show, and then I wound up talking more with Lester, and he was like, you know, like, what kind of stuff do you do, and what are you into? And so we kind of hit it off, and then he contacted me about Rise, and so he said, you know, we have a list of artists that are going to be doing projects. Would you be interested in donating a piece or doing a piece for the show? And so I was like, absolutely. And so then I started, they gave us a bunch of research material, and then I did my own research, and then we got to meet with some of the Black Panthers and kind of talk about what was going on. And then I just went around and just talked to different people about the Black Panthers, and then and that was kind of how the piece came about. And so that was a really trippy piece, though. That was like, it was really intense. Just conceptually, and just the kind of places where that's kind of the other interesting thing too, is like when you do these pieces, they kind of take you on a journey, you know, like you wind up kind of I mean, and that was the thing, is like I kind of wound up just kind of like going through the history of the Black Panthers and really trying to, you know, absorb it as much as possible to try and give a kind of honest portrayal of what my feelings were about it, and like what I wanted to say, and then what I also wanted to have the audience walk away with.
And it was challenging because at that moment they had just kind of said that some people had said that Richard was an informant. So that was why it was like a challenging piece also. He's a Japanese American that's in the Black Panthers, and it turns out, like, I mean, and I don't know if it's true or not.
There, like, that was the thing, and there was a lot of controversy around him in terms of, you know, was he an informant, was he not an informant? And so, but to me, that was kind of the interesting thing about it, was that because to me, I mean, the Black Panthers in general is just, it's like a hot button issue for a lot of people. Yeah. And so then to go into a hot button issue and then find another hot button issue inside a hot button issue, like, that's interesting to me. So I was like, let's see what is really going on, and then what is the statement that you can make with that, you know? And so, and then doing the research on Richard, I just found out, like, it's just, you know, I mean, to me, it was just kind of like, it's just this tragic. It's a really tragic story, you know. I mean, and that's the whole thing. Is that I think that the Black Panthers were kind of they were trying to fight against all this stuff, and there's just so much tragedy involved, you know. And that was one of the things that I wanted to highlight was just the struggle that was involved with being with the Black Panthers, as well as the pitfalls and stuff like that that they had to face, you know, in light of society, you know.
And
So-
I mean that's kind of like how I met you.
Yeah,
I kind of
yeah,
tracked you
yeah,
down.
yeah.
But I want to know, you have Adventures of Wally Fresh.
Yes,
Your
yes.
comic, and this comic is something you've written, you've drawn, produced your entirely yourself independently.
Yes.
So can you give me a little bit, like, how did you kind of come about doing Wally Fresh?
Okay. Yes. Yeah. So Wally Fresh, and like, so now we're going, like, this is totally 180.
Totally different. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So we're going from, you know, the tragedy and struggle of the Black Panthers to now a comic book about living in Brooklyn.
And is Wally you?
Kind of.
Autobiography? Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Like, a lot of people, it looks like me. But I was talking to a guy, and he's like, Wally's you, and I was like, no, well, everybody in the comic is me.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, really, like,
you're
really,
also an alien. You're also the horrible roommate. Alien.
I'm a terrible roommate. I'm an alien living in the subways, and you know, I'm all these different things. And so, like, so basically, the idea with Wally Fresh was
you get your jacket off.
Yeah. Okay.
No one ever gets hot in here.
Yeah. So the idea with Wally Fresh was I was working as a freelancer doing illustration work, and I had signed up with some agents, and the agents needed samples from me.
Okay.
And I had written the script called The Adventures of Christion Metalhorn when I was in college.
Okay.
And I pitched the idea a couple times, and it failed. And then when I started working with this agency, they were like, we need new work from you. What can you give us? And I was like, well, be more specific. And they're like, we can't be more specific. We just need work from you. And so I went back to the drawing board, and I looked at a bunch of stuff, and then I found this old script called The Adventures of Christion Metalhorn. And then I was like, well, maybe I could work with this. And I read it, and I was like, it made me laugh. And I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of funny. And I was like, I'll do one issue just to see where it goes. And then I finished the first issue. I sent it to the agents, and they were like, this is cool. We can start working with this. And then in the meantime, I still wasn't working.
Yes.
And so I just decided to do I was like, okay, well, let me do another issue. And so then I did another one, and then after that I was like, okay, let me just see if I can finish off this first storyline. And so then I finished off the first storyline, and then I went to there's like a couple of comic book shops that I like to go to in LA. One is called House of Secrets, another one is Meltdown in Hollywood, and Golden Apple. And I went to House of Secrets first, and I talked to the guy. The owner's name is Paul, and I went to him and I said, you know, look, I got this comic book that I'm doing. Would you guys be interested? Because at that point I had pitched it to a couple of different publishers, and nobody was interested in it. But I liked it so much, and it made me laugh so much that I was just like, you know what, I'll just go ahead and put it out myself. Yeah. And so I went to the guys over at House of Secrets, and they were like, okay, we got to read it first and make sure that we're okay with it. But they're like, if it's any good, we'll put it on the shelf and we'll give you a spot, and you know, that'll be that. And so they read it and they liked it, and so they gave me a spot on the rack, and so that was where it kind of started. And then from there I went to Meltdown in Hollywood, and then I went to Golden Apple, and then also there's a shop called Cool Cats Comics and Cards, which is run by these two brothers and this guy named Vaughn. It's the Yuan twins, and they're also like really huge fans of the book, and they've been instrumental in kind of helping me get it out there, and really kind of like helping out indie artists, you know. Well,
you know, there's a question. To me, this is a really great comic. I put the review for the CRB comic review.
Okay, yeah.
I put that review up, and probably people are watching on Twitter and all that stuff.
Okay.
But you know, is it challenging for Black illustrators and cartoonists to kind of break into? I mean, even if they have a black character, like is that challenging? Totally. Like, what's the kind of
I mean, I'll say this: my experience has been being in the comic book industry is, I mean, it's this kind of thing where I go to I appear at different, I'll table at different conventions, you know. But I mean, in terms of like, there's like the thing called the Big Two, which is DC and Marvel, and I mean, in terms of like my experience with jobs with them is like they're not. You can't. It's very hard to submit to them.
Yeah.
It's kind of like once you get to a certain level, then they'll call you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you know, you're also like that's. I mean, that's the thing is, it's. I feel like there's a lot of oversaturation with the comic book industry, I guess, and it's that kind of thing where like, you know, and people who go to cons will know this. It's like if you go to a con with your comic book and you talk to an editor, that editor has talked to like, you know, 50 people before you, and so you're dealing with that kind of like, you're like I've had experiences where I'll go and talk to an editor and the guy is just like, you know, he's not necessarily a bad guy, but you just caught him at the wrong time, and it's like it's like 3 p.m. and he's seen like 80 other people. Yeah. And so, you know, you're one in a line of 80 people, and then you're like, but I got the one. You know? And they're like, you know, yeah, sure. So it like, but that, I mean, to me, it's kind of like it's brought around this whole indie publishing, you know, because I mean, and that's the other thing too, is it's like it's really easy to publish your own stuff right now. Yeah. Because of the do-it-yourself process, and there's a lot of print-on-demand places where it's like, you know, you shell out like $5-10 and you can get a few books, you know, and then it's just on you to really push it. And that's, I mean, that's where. That's the biggest hurdle I found, is just in exposure and getting and you know, the other thing too is that you're going like, I mean, and I think that's the testament to the book, is that you can put this book on the same shelf with Spider-Man and Batman and Captain America and all these guys, and it'll still sell.
I think that's one thing. That's what I like about your book, is that a kid could look at this book and pick it up, and it's like you know, a black kid could pick up this book, and it's like a normal, you know, not normal, but it's like a well-rounded character. Yeah, you have a Subway, your seasoned girlfriend, all these odd little quirks. But I mean, it's like a full character. It's like a full guy, and it's kind of like, even when you do have black characters in mainstream comics, they're almost like the stereotype. They're like kind of like the magical Negro. So I mean, is that kind of like why you wrote like Wally
totally.
Fresh? To kind of give that a, you know. Yeah.
So no, I was totally frustrated with that kind of portrayal that I would see. I always, and I mean, the other thing too is that it's like you know, you want to try and like, the book was the answer to like all the films that I was watching and the TV shows that I was watching, books that I was reading, because I was like, I'm not seeing a representation of myself that I like, you know, and then two, I'm not seeing stories that I'm enjoying. So I was like, you know, and I mean, it's egotistical, but it's that kind of thing where it's like, well, fuck, I'll do it then. Give me the pen. I'll do one. Yeah,
I'll do one. It's gonna be better than all these other ones. What I mean, who you know? Before I ask, I was going to ask who encouraged you in the arts, but I'm going to start off with. I know this book got an award from Glyph.
Well, it was nominated.
I'm sorry, it was nominated from Glyph. And what is Glyph?
Okay, so for people that don't know, the Glyph Awards it highlights excellence in sequential storytelling for people of color. So if you're, and that's like another thing. So if you're a black comic creator that's out there and you're working on your book, find the Glyph Awards and submit your book to the Glyph Awards, because it's one of those things where you know, it's such a great thing, because it allows for, if you don't have a major publisher behind you, if you don't have a whole lot of marketing, and but you're still really dedicated to the story, and you really want to see the story happen, and you want to share it with people, they will take a look, and they'll look at it, and you know, you never know what'll happen. It might get an award, it might not, but at the very least, it's an outlet for the creators to kind of have their work looked at and recognized. And so, I'm trying to think of what else I can tell you about the book. I mean, and like the other thing that I've tried to do with the book is that I try to highlight, and just try to create interesting characters that, you know, that you're not used to seeing. I mean, that's the thing, is it's like, I mean, for me, I think that Wally Fresh is just kind of this, like, he's a really sweet character, and like that's the other thing too, is that like all the characters in the book are really, really sweet, you know, and they're really nice, and it's the kind of characters that you want to sit down and like hang out with, and I try to do that on purpose, just because it's like that's something you don't really necessarily see all that much, you know. And they're not doing, you know, it's not. I mean, I try to make it like put them in positions where it's like, you know, you never see a black Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
yeah. Or it's like that kind of stuff, and like those are the kinds of things that I was trying to do with the book. And so I use like my experience of New York and pop culture and just life in general as kind of like the fodder for it. And
the subway, right?
yeah. And then I also try to make it like it's like you can get, it's like mining like black pop culture, you know. So if you don't know anything about black pop culture, it's like take the A Train. Like the second book, for people that don't know, so Wally Fresh it's currently in its 11th issue. It has 2 graphic novels. The first one is called Cupid's Arrow, and the second one is called Take the A Train. And so Take the A Train, the title, it's like a double thing. And so for people that don't know, Take the A Train is it's like the famous Duke Ellington song, which is, you know, like when you go to New York, you take the A Train, like you know, take the A Train. But the other, like for me, my personal experience with New York was there's the G train in Brooklyn, right? Okay, and the G train is like one of the worst trains in New York because and you know, no knock against the MTA, but it just runs really, really slow. So if you have someplace you need to go on like on a weeknight, you know, after 6 or 7, you ain't gonna get there if you take the G train because you're gonna be waiting for like 2 or 3 hours. Okay, and so when I like, and so you know, so for me it was like the unspoken thing was like, if you got to go somewhere, take the A train instead because you're going to get there a lot faster. And so when I set out to do the second book, that was kind of the thing. It was like I was like, and I would sit around, like you just sit and you wait for this stupid train. Like I just want to go home. And so I started thinking, I was like, well, what is going on with this train? And then the more I thought about it, I was like, what if there was like an alien, you know, on the inside of the tunnels that are stealing trains?
I believe that. I think that's actually happening with the Blue Line.
Okay. Yeah.
For a while, I think it was getting like alien abductions or something.
Yeah.
Something was going on with it.
Yeah. Well, plus, I mean, you know, anytime you take the subway in New York, you're bound to see a couple of aliens somewhere.
Yeah. Your roommates. So that's the whole thing. Which one are you, Barry, or are you Wally? Yeah. So that would be the question I would have for you. Yeah. What's some advice you would give to like black illustrators and animators, or just like young people who kind of want to go into that field?
I would just say make stuff. You have to just make it and put it on the internet. Yeah. You know, I mean that's like, I mean you can go like there's the other thing is like once you're getting into like the nitty gritties of, you know, you can go and table at conventions and you know, you can go and knock on doors. But again, you're waiting. It's that kind of thing of like you're waiting for somebody to say yes. Yeah. You know, which is like, and it's not to say that the yes won't come, because the yes will come, but you're also just kind of, it's like that's just one of the things that you're working against, you know. And so you have to, I feel like you know, you just have to inundate people with stuff, you know. And it's like, hey, I wrote this thing, read it. You know, or I drew this thing, take a look at it, tell me what you think. But I think the biggest thing is like you have to make it first, though. You know, it's because I think that's the and that's the other thing too is you know, I think a lot of things that people run into is it's like when you set out to do something creative, there's always this idea of, you know, you're making your opus. Yes. You know, and it's, you know, I think the creative process is always kind of it's trial and error. And so, you know, you have to first you have to be okay with, like, you know, like you slave for, you know, 5 years on this thing, and then, you know, nothing happened, and it's like, well, you know, it's just your first one, so yeah, you know, you got to go for longevity as opposed to, you know, the flash in the pan, I suppose. Okay. You know, at least that's what I tell myself.
So you know, we're glad that we had you here, but is there anything that's going on that we should know about?
Okay, so I just finished the animated adaptation of the book. Okay. And that's going off. It's under consideration at a couple festivals. And so we'll see. Hopefully it'll get in. I pitched a couple things. Like I pitched, like the main thing I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to get the book turned into a cartoon show. Okay. And so I've pitched it around to a couple studios. Nobody's bit yet. but hopefully, it'll get the following that it needs. And then in addition to that, I have a couple other projects that I'm working on. I've pitched a couple movie ideas and stuff, and then I'm just chugging away on the book. The latest book, it hopefully will be out in the next month or so.
Okay.
So this will be issue 11.
Okay. Yeah, because this is issue 10. So, but thank you so much, Turner.
Cool. Yes,
for and what we're going to do is we're going to actually put beneath. We're going to put all of how to get in contact with you, how to get the book, all your things that you shout out, all your Matt and everybody. So Meltdown Comics. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. So that was it for Turner Lange. Up next, what we're going to have is Jessica and Chris, a curatorial team. And remember to watch us at latalklive.com, 360 Radio, iTunes R&B. But we will see you in a little bit. We're going to have a little bit of a break. All right. So talk to you soon.
Should've stayed at Margie's, they won't let you speak English. Oh, what word to begin with, I do not I'm off to thinking when I've been drinking, but good conversation is best when I'm alone. I got hired for my music, but I turned it to a user, and you can't tell the boys from the girls.
All right, we are back with Chris and Jessica, and what we're going to do right now is we're going to have a really great conversation with, I remember when I first met you guys. Actually, when I first met Jessica, I saw her at Human Resources Beyond the White Box. And I remember seeing her like, she has a friend, please help me. No, I shouldn't say, I'm just kidding. That was a lot of fun. I'm just kidding, that was a lot of fun. Let's give a little bit of, let me give it a little bit of a background. As both artists and curators, Chris and Jessica, or Chris Christensen?
Christion.
Christion. I am so sorry. We went over this like several times. Christion
no problem.
And Jessica Wimbley believe that effective visual arts and critical historical practice must be inclusive of differing cultural, social, political, and anthropological perspectives. As Wimbley and Chris are both artist curators, are intrigued by the interconnected and multifaceted link of biomythography across disciplines, particularly in the visual arts. So let's talk a little bit about, but before we do that, I wanted to ask you each, what's your favorite bookstore in Los Angeles?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know. I mean, I'm like thinking, I haven't lived in LA in a little bit because we're out of Claremont. So
okay, well you can say one in Claremont, wherever you want, whatever one you want to say, or we could go with the favorite art gallery. But when you do that, then you start making making friends.
Yeah, I feel bad because I'm like, I'm not sure what the bookstores are in LA and Claremont. We have college bookstores and whatnot.
You have college bookstore
with a lot of stuff, but we also have a huge library with like 7 different colleges. So
so you guys don't really have to go anywhere. You guys are you guys are all part of the whole Claremont, this whole like kind of a Ivy League system in Los Angeles, one of the best universities. You guys both are working there. Well, not exactly working there, but
yeah, I mean the Claremont colleges, it's 7 different colleges. Yeah. It's a consortium of schools, 5 undergrad and 1 graduate school, and then you have the Keck Institute.
And I work at the graduate school. I'm the gallery manager there.
Well, how does the whole thing? How'd you guys come about working together? Other than how do you guys work? How do you guys work together? Like, how'd that happen? How'd that come about?
It's pretty organic, I think. We both met working as artists, and when we kind of always have discussions about kind of things that we find problematic or discouraging, and ways in which these things could be resolved, and we just kind of started working on ways to do that.
And plus, when I was working at Pomona, I worked at Pomona College at the Pomona College Museum of Art for 4 years, and one of my jobs there was to do outreach and programming. So I started the Art After Hours program there. So with the jobs that we both do or did on the campuses, we're dealing with different issues that are directly related to engaging people with art. How do you show artwork, display, exhibition design, education? So all of these things were issues that we're experiencing either working in our jobs or with our own experience, with our own careers. So these are conversations that we're having all the time. So by the time we got to the point where we're like, let's look at doing a project together, it was such a natural fit. Although a lot of people are like, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that together? And we wanted to be sure that we had a very, besides it being organic, we still wanted it to be strategic.
Yes.
We didn't just want to do some random flash in the pan thing. We really wanted to make sure that we had something very specific that we're looking at, that we had a goal and a trajectory. And so that's where we came up with Biomythography and working on that project together as curators. And Biomythography, actually, it comes from Audre Lorde, and particularly in her book, Zami, a Respelling of My Name, she uses that to describe her particular writing style, which is the combination of biography, mythology, and history, and using that to kind of create new narratives and counter narratives, or ways to explain and investigate identity. And I thought that was something that's looked at literary, but I thought, wow, in terms of even thinking about my own work and trying to figure out ways and the actual language to describe it, I thought that biomythography was great. And that a lot of artists are actually visual artists are using biomythography in their work, but they're not using the term to talk about how they're making their work. So that was something that we were both thinking was an important element into framing kind of a new way to think about how visual artists can engage or think about identity politics in a contemporary way, not looking at what people necessarily were doing in the 90s, or even using the language that has been used to talk about those different things, but making a interdisciplinary connection.
And go ahead.
And I was going to say, what you have to do, I think, when you find yourself either removed or not included in the discussion, then you generally have to go to different places to kind of cobble the discussion together, which I think going to the literary term was great, because I think there is, for a lot of the artists that we've met that were working with it kind of consciously or unconsciously, they're kind of wanting the language in which to kind of discuss it in a way that people can kind of be tied to the bigger discussion that's been happening throughout, history. And then I think by bringing biomythography in and the ideas that are there, it gives kind of a direct connection for visual artists to kind of go off on their work, which was kind of important to us in kind of curating the show, is to also kind of give kind of some umbrella for artists to work under.
Well, I like the fact that you guys are using biomythography because when she kind of came up with that term as a genre, like, people thought it was a joke, like, a black woman can't come up, she's a black woman, she's a lesbian, she's an immigrant, she can't come up with her own genre. We we can create all these new genres out of thin air, but so it's kind of like you're kind of also kind of re-elevating Lorde's, like, what she was trying to do. And there are so many people who are doing kind of what you guys are doing, but without using the name of it. And I think that's really really, really important. I see here. I'm gonna read both of your artist statements just a little bit, not the whole thing. It says, for you, in my work, I investigate, question identity, history, merging both the genetic and biological and socio-historical, creating narratives that shift between micro and macro representations, the one-drop rule. So these are kind of things that kind of influence your work. We have some of your work kind of going through. Kind of, is this something that you were always interested in when you were creating your work, or?
Well, when I was in grad school, what was really important for that experience for me was actually being introduced to the sciences, because for undergrad I went to RISD, so I just went to a straight art school.
Yes.
And then for getting my MFA, I'm like, oh my goodness, there's all these different disciplines that I have access to. And I ended up having a really great crew of friends who happened to be these phenomenal like PhDs in science. And so I would dork out and ask questions and get involved. And they actually, my good friend Josh Chang, he was the one who introduced me to Octavia Butler. So in grad school, I learned about Octavia Butler, and I'm like, oh my God, this is the most amazing, awesome, dope stuff ever. And I love how she has the female protagonist. I love how she deals with kind of shifting identities, even in physical ways. And so moving from there, I really started to integrate, kind of thinking about, well, what does it mean to be Black on a biological level? What does it mean socially? Like, how does that relate to Henrietta Lacks? Or what are these different? So there's some Afrofuturism in there. There's some like speculative humanities there. There's definitely identity politics there, and it's a hodgepodge of all these different things. But I think with my particular work, one of the important elements to it is kind of looking at the micro and the macro and the space in between, and using that kind of as a both a visual and kind of conceptual framework into approaching the work. So by the time I came to biomythography, it was after actually having my first solo show and trying to think about how to describe my work, because I'd seen some stuff that like looked like what I was doing, but it wasn't like I felt like there was a language that described exactly what I was doing and what my interests are. And then adding on to like working in these different mediums and using like new mediums with digital photography and all the different printing and things you could do, there still hasn't even been like language to describe what some of these things are. So the idea of trying to find the correct language to, when you're not represented, you're not seeing necessarily representations that are reflective of what you're doing, finding that language is a really important and vital part into kind of continuing your investigation. So that's how biomythography, I saw biomythography, I was like, yes, this is it.
And you, Christion, you received your MFA from University of California, Irvine, your BFA from Oklahoma. You exhibited throughout U.S. and Europe, all over the place. This is not really your artist statement, but this is kind of like your little, like, these are his credentials. How can I say this, as a Black man in America, kind of with all the things that are going on, I mean, you guys are working as a team, and you kind of have this different way of seeing things. I mean, how does that impact when you're working with Jessica? How does that impact you? Like, how do you like work together to kind of make sure that you're showing a complete picture?
I don't know. I find we're a lot more on the same page than not. It's just kind of different approaches and concerns to kind of the same issues. I think kind of how I come about art is in a similar way, not finding yourself represented, but I was really interested in how, especially as a Black male, we were being represented, and especially as a big Black male, it's like there's a very, very limited like representation you get, and it kind of spans between the kind of thug or the magical Negro, and
it's like the theme just keeps coming up.
And I was always kind of fascinated by the kind of projections that I got on people, I mean, who I was, and then when you start getting into art, and you go into museums, and when you do come across people of color, then the kind of labeling and the deciding on who and what these artifacts mean and who these people were is kind of not done by us. And so it's again, you're kind of cobbling together other people's representations, trying to match them with your own understanding of yourself. And I think that's kind of where I kind of tied in with biomythography. When we were having a discussion about that, like a lot of the artists we talked to was like, I think I do that.
Yeah.
Because you're kind of constantly pulling from who you are, then the myth of who you are, and then kind of the history of who we were, and then your representation. And I'm pastor's son, and so I have a lot of kind of references from church and education and all these different disciplines that were uniquely important to me, that always made their way into my work. But that discussion I didn't really see present, and representations of me I didn't see present. And so one of my idols, I would say, is Melvin Van Peebles, and I remember he said that when he got into film, he was like, I didn't see what I wanted, so I made it myself. And I thought, well, that's
we're so lucky that you guys are also curators. I mean, 'cause that's a kind of a challenging thing when you're an artist and you're trying to curate work and not try to be just and think on a larger level. I mean, this is a very complicated, complex kind of a project that you guys are doing. It's not something that you can just, and I think that's what I like about it, is that's not something you could just kind of explain like, it's this. It's about, natural hair. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm kind of tired of that kind of really just basic conversation. We need a deeper conversation, and I think that it's visual arts, but it's kind of provoking a political conversation. I mean, that's another question is like, are you guys consciously black artists? It's not like it's kind of like, are you consciously black artists, or are you just kind of like, okay, I'm just doing who I am, or is it something that you're thinking about, or no?
I mean, I think it's one of those things where it's like, it's an unavoidable trait, It's like, it just is what it is. You're a black person making art. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the answer to that is, because it's, I mean,
well, I think part of the definition to get this defined with the kind of work or the idea of work being universal versus specific to black, which I don't know, I've always had a problem with, because if I was white and talked about the same issues, they'd be universal, but when I'm black, they're not. And if I go into issues of violence, or just what's going on in the country, that's just that's what artists do. So I try not to think of it, I guess. and I don't think that I always think of it as like I'm exploring history, and I'm interested in history. I tend a lot to explore history of that relates to me, and use that as kind of a foundation to talk about other issues. So a lot of black faces and black things.
Totally.
But I think that's just natural.
And I mean, I don't know. I feel like part of our job as artists is to kind of expose the unseen, or dig deeper into what we're seeing, and that act in general isn't necessarily.
Remember, get close to the mic.
It's not necessarily. I'm trying to find
culturally specific.
In some ways, it's not. Well, yeah. I mean, in some ways, it's not culturally specific. But I mean, it's like our jobs as artists are to be critical, and I mean, I think criticality expands beyond race, and I think even more so, it's important, if you're especially an artist of color and you're underrepresented in the field, to be self-critical and for us to but be critical in a positive, productive way, because you're not necessarily going to get the type of feedback that you need within certain structures. So to think, and you're not always going to get it from the people that you necessarily think are part of your community or within the art world. So I think it's really important that you're able to be critical and have expansive conversations from different people with different perspectives who are able to inform what you do and who are able to expand and engage in conversation. So for me, I don't think I don't have like a segregated art world where it's like there's just this black art world. I don't even, I don't know, honestly, I don't know what that is like. I mean, I love when I see black people at galleries, I'm like, yay, there's more people. But going through school, I've never experienced that. I didn't live in a black community, so again, kind of this segregated model and approach, it's something that doesn't necessarily reflect the reality that I live in, my own personal experience. And well,
I have another question, Jessica, for you in regards to there's something I noticed about your work, and you had a piece called Belle, and you had a piece about mothers and daughters. You have a very respectful kind of portrayal of history, even in the people that it's because of who you are, it's a black history, and you have representation at a gallery, Western Projects, and I almost find you you're kind of unique, because it seems like there's kind of like this idea either the person's work is either invisible, has kind of no culture, even though you're saying that it's like universal. It is universal, even though it is universal, or it seems very much like satirical and mocking black culture. You don't seem to be doing that. Do you think it's because of how you see it in a universal sense? So I always feel like sometimes some black artists almost feel like they have to kind of go, yeah, I get the joke, I get being black is funny. But you're not really doing that. I mean, do you think that's kind of why you don't do that? I mean, I don't know why.
And I think part of it is that I'm interested in nuance, and satire kind of works with, in some ways, kind of amping some of the obvious, and that's not what I'm interested in visually and conceptually. I'm more interested in a nuance, and again, that's where I go to that framework of the micro and the macro, because it allows you the space to look at what's in between and to also compare what happens with the micro and the macro. So for example, there'll be images of my work where you see like melanin doubles, but they seem like abstract shapes, but it's like, here's this microscopic image of melanin, which determines the pigment of your skin and your hair color and your eye color. But then I'll go to including space imagery too, so that you have these two polars, and then you have the figure kind of in between these spaces negotiating these different things. So with that, I think you capture more of a nuance, and I think that's what's important. I mean, I think in some ways discussions of race have become more nuanced. What our experiences as black people, you're dealing with these kind of polarities. And Audre Lorde has, I'm totally going to butcher the quote, but she has a really great quote where it's like, we need to get together and have polarities of difference in order to have true conversation and understanding. So in that sense, I'm like, I think it's important to bring that kind of polarity within the work.
And Christion, with your work, what inspires you? Like, what's your motivating force? What's
I think it's partly my kind of trying to figure out my placement within kind of the world and the art world and all these things. And so it, in a lot of my work, I'm sort of trying to put the viewer in kind of the same viewpoint or the same kind of space or kind of to say emotional state is
Psychological space.
Psychological space, yeah. As I feel when I'm just kind of moving through this world. And again, it references different things throughout my life that, there's a lot of references to religion, and in religion, just kind of the negotiating between kind of the humility that you approach religion with, and kind of the humility I think is needed when you approach art, particularly approaching art of that is dealing with difference, because in order to understand things that particularly don't have a history that has been included, you have to approach it with a level of humility to be able to say, okay, maybe this is a point of view that I just don't get, and there's some information that I am lacking in order to get the point of view, and not just simply dismiss it. And I like to kind of play with that. Sometimes I make work that I think, okay, I have myself dismissed things like this. Like I did a still life series specifically because I myself throughout time dismissed still life until finding out when I was in school that one of the still lifes that I saw in this museum was done by African-American artist, and funny enough, it never dawned on me that African-American like did still life. Like this is like a European kind of framework for work, and so that was a kind of hugely influential moment for me, because it helped me kind of figure out that it wasn't just simply about these images, but these images actually meant something. That the kind of fruits and bowls and stuff that you see are not just fruits and bowls, but you're talking about trade items that were transported across seas, and these things were shown as representations of wealth off the backs of the labor force that died and sweated trying to get these things. And so in a way, we always were, in my mind, represented there.
Just like how we may have, not in a pleasant way.
Yeah.
That was weird. I was looking at some Hudson River School paintings at the museum, in the Fine Art Museum in San Francisco, and I was kind of like, oh, this is whatever. I remember, and then I saw Sandow Burke. He had this piece. And it was called, like, I guess,
San Quentin.
But yeah. And I that was just so, and I kind of wondered, I'm like, I wonder how many of these paintings that I just kind of were like, oh, this paintings of the river actually meant something else. And we're just kind of, because it got so removed and because everything gets kind of like cleaned up, kind of like, we can even talk about, Dr. King, everything gets cleaned up as things go past, because they don't want you to think. They don't want you to think politically. So, I mean, I wonder.
And especially looking at history with any type of what were the political agendas during the different times. I mean, you think about these beautiful these beautiful landscapes that were being done at the turn of the century while America was expanding. I mean, honestly, that's propaganda. If you put it in context, at that time, that was the propaganda used to kind of sell the myth, the fantasy, the glory, and the manifest destiny of going out west. But in an art historical sense, you're not going to talk about it as America propaganda. You're going to talk about it as, this landscape painting. So it depends on, what approach that you're coming from and seeing this, viewing these things. How can you be in conversation? What does it mean to start curating when you have a different perspective than how some of this work has been presented in the past? But yeah, these issues I think fascinate both of us.
I think you guys should do a show with the whole like still life scenery type thing. That's what I think you guys should do. I could totally see that, because now I'm like, we feel like we just had like a breakthrough conversation. I was like, that is right. It is propaganda, because we're actually talking about that on Twitter. We're talking about propaganda, archiving, your imagery and all that stuff, and it's kind of like how it connects. I mean, Turner Lange and you guys, even though you're on two different sides of the artistic universe, but you're not really that different, because you're both kind of doing the same thing in a different way, even though you're kind of like both in a different space. But it's kind of like, for me, it's like, oh, you guys are doing the same thing.
I think it all makes sense, especially in all these kind of visual representations. Those are the things that we look at. Like I love looking at like black caricatures, or just any kind of stereotypical representation made as a little kind of collectible item. I think those things are fascinating, because then again, you're dealing with propaganda and the mass marketing of like racism and how effectively that was done. It's like, I remember years ago my father was talking about I think Amos and Andy, and he was one comment that stayed with me. He was saying that it worked because it was well done and it was funny. And I thought that's an interesting thing, because it's like, even if, and I think we've seen this all the time, even if people can kind of see the negative in it, if they feel an attachment to it, they really fight to not let it go.
To not see it. Yeah. If it's beautiful, they go, oh.
I see people collectibles and that, but they're so cute.
They're so cute.
Maybe so, but
yeah, I was thinking, until I was an adult, I didn't realize that Heckle and Jekyll were supposed to be black people. Everybody like looks at me like, what? I'm like, well, I don't act that way. I don't know who that's supposed to be. I didn't know that was supposed to be me, but like now I know. But I'm just kind of like, it's weird how things get erased. Okay, what are you guys doing? Like, how can we see the show? You got a little pocket. You guys are so cute. They're married. I don't know why they're trying to act like they're not.
Okay. So, our next biomythography show, Secret Poetry and Hidden Angers, will be at Cal Lutheran University in Thousand Oaks, and it will be on view from August 13th to October 16th, 2015.
Okay.
Upcoming shows I have actually will both be in. One is the Coachella Valley Art Center, LANCV2, and that's from February 1st to March 2nd, and it has an opening February 14th. And really stoked. Valerie Thomas is curating a show that we'll be participating in, called Vertigo at Midnight, New Visual Afrofuturisms and Speculative Migrations, and that will be on view February 23rd through March 6th, with an opening February 25th at 4:15.
Okay, and I will actually put all that stuff underneath so people can see it. I always do that. I always like so people can like see the work and all that stuff and see what you guys are doing. I am so happy to have you guys here all the way from Claremont.
Thank you for having me.
No. It's just like I'm just very lucky. Like when I was kind of like going through. I mean, the thing is that I kind of, like I said, I just saw them as, they're black people. And we're at the same place. And then I got a card. I mean, because I had no idea who you were, which is like, I don't know why. I mean, I should know who you are. When I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, she's like, you guys are both like really huge. So like, thank God. Surprised you told me yes for my little show.
This is great. I mean, and this is the thing. Like, I had to tell you, meeting Valerie Thomas was huge for both of us, and we were introduced to her from your show.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's like your show does a lot in terms of connecting different artists. So, I'm stoked to be here. You should know this, because it's really important, because people do their hustle. They don't know if they're making impact. I'm like, you made impact.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That's awesome. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So, that will be it for the Black Girl Show. Next week we're going to have June Edmonds on, an artist, and we have somebody else on, but I can't remember their name right now. I'm really sorry, but that's okay. Keep in mind the Black Girl Show is every Saturday at 3 p.m. The Black Girl Book Fair will be March 7th. If you want more information, of course, you can just email me, blackgirlshow@gmail.com. And also, you can always find us on Twitter, #BlackGirlShow. Actually, it's #BlackGirl. That's all you have to do. So thank you guys so much. iTunes R&B, Radio 365, and all that good stuff. And thank you for our engineer, Van, who did a great job today. Yay! Even though my cue sheet was a little bit off. So thank you guys so much, and talk to you January 24th. I don't even know what month it is now. That's so sad. I'm like 2015.
Yeah, kind of in denial.
Yeah. I'm thinking it's like 1995. I don't know why. It's like the year you graduated from high school. I shouldn't say that. I forgot. I'm faking my age. Okay, I'm sorry. I graduated from high school in 1999.
No, you gotta say 2000.
2000.
You gotta be in the millennium
Yeah.
now. Leave the 90s out of it.
Yeah. Leave the 90s out of it. People were born in like 1990.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's really strange to me.
Mhm.
And they can drink too.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't no more.
All right. So we'll see you guys later.
I like it.